Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Bring the World Home, a production of the Returned Peace Corps Volunteers of Hawaii. This little production is kind of unique in that each week we are pleased to be able to explore the experiences and knowledge gained by a volunteer who served in one of the 132 countries around the world that the Peace Corps serves. Today we have with us Mr. Sam Lemo. Sam, welcome to the program. We appreciate your commitment to giving us time to find out a little bit about your service. Sam served in the Philippines from 1986 to 1988 in a very unusual area of the Philippines, Quezon, am I pronouncing that right? Quezon province?
That's right.
And an area known as Bondoc Peninsula.
Right.
Sounds like a place that I'd like to view. Looking at the map of it, must have been a wonderful, was it a tropical paradise or in the tropics, obviously?
Beautiful, idyllic location, coconut trees, beaches, thatch huts. Very nice.
Before we get too far into your experience in the Philippines, I'd like to get a little background on how you came to know about Peace Corps service, how you came across the idea of wanting to volunteer in the first place.
I found out about Peace Corps while an undergraduate at the University of California at Santa Barbara. I was in the environmental studies program there, which is at that time at least was one of the best programs of its type in the country. We had a great suite of professors. Garrett Hardin, Tragedy of the Commons, which is a classic. Overuse
Wonderful
of the
book.
commons results in a general degradation for everybody, so very nice concepts. Anyway, I was very much interested in environmental issues and environmental problems, and I wanted to look at the global perspective. And I thought that Peace Corps might be a place where I could take some of the tools that I learned in environmental studies and apply them in an area where they might have an impact. And so I saw some advertisements about Peace Corps. I looked into it. I made contact with Peace Corps, and we started the application process. It was a relatively long process. I did actually meet with Returned Peace Corps volunteers. That was part of the process to try to see if I really wanted to do it, because when you commit to Peace Corps, it's a big commitment. And
Yes.
You have to be sure that's what you want to do for the next 2 years of your life. And so I did commit eventually, and I went from Southern California to the Philippines and started the process of becoming a volunteer.
Well, that is kind of typical of how the process works nowadays. You're invited to go to a country, a host country, and begin a training program in country. In your case, I guess that's where you went somewhere near Manila in the Philippines, and what, trained for 2 or 3 months?
That's right, Chip. We went about 2 hours or 3 hours north of Manila to a place called Tarlac, Pampanga, and it was a college, and we started training there. My was agroforestry.
Okay.
So that's what we were trained in. We did agroforestry training and also, of course, language training. And the funny thing is we had about 25 people in our group, and I think there was 12 dialects that were being taught, in the school. So
Yes.
it was like a little a Tower of Babel. Everybody was talking, but nobody could understand each other. And then at Pampanga, we were sent out to some host families to kind of get an idea of what it's like living with Filipino families, and that was part of our training. And then we were drawn back in to the training camp and given assignments.
Do you feel that this aspect of your Peace Corps experience up to that point was appropriate and moving you in the right direction? Looking back at it, could they have done? Could Peace Corps have done something better, or you think it was a good approach to preparing a volunteer to go into a community?
I think it was a fantastic approach. I had heard that before that they were actually training volunteers on the Big Island,
Yes.
up in
Waipio Valley.
Waipio Valley.
Yeah, was
And
a great training site.
that was interesting, I thought. But I think what they did with us was 100% the right thing to do. They took us in country. They put us in an agricultural college, and we were actually out on the land day in and day out, learning agroforestry techniques. And the language training was fantastic. It was very intensive. We had a nice time together as volunteers for that training period. We developed wonderful relationships with each other, and I still know a couple of them today. So I think it was a good model.
The preparation aspect
Yeah.
of it. And your background in environmental studies it sounds like it would mesh nicely with an assignment in agronomy, agroforestry, and so once your training was complete, were you thrown out on your own to figure out what to do with the rest of the time that you were going to be in country, or did Peace Corps guide you to your project, or give us an idea of what happened next here?
Well, they didn't exactly throw me out, but I remember my regional manager telling me, you know, when they handed out assignments, and then they came to me. I think I was one of the last people they handed out an assignment to, and he said, "And for you, Sam, we're sending you to the end of the world." And I thought that was kind of interesting, and you know, I wanted an adventure, you know, and I got more than I bargained for, actually. I was sent to a place called Bondoc Peninsula, as you mentioned earlier, in a municipality of Molinai.
Okay.
And it was a very remote area. There wasn't really any other volunteers around me, let alone, you know, Westerners. And so I was kind of on my own. I did luck out in the sense that there was a volunteer in the town that they sent me to, and we overlapped. And that's the reason they sent me there, because they wanted to see if they could carry on these programs. And so that was very...
Programs the other volunteer had already
started.
begun.
Although he was in a slightly different capacity. So I lucked out in that sense, because that volunteer was very kind, and Robert Corkum was his name, and he helped me with the language. He helped me meet people in the town, and it really set up a really good transition. But he eventually left after 2 months, and then I was really on my own at that point.
Okay. Well, so you get sent to an area, you have a little bit of knowledge of what you're going to do, and this is fairly typical Peace Corps beginnings, I guess, or beginnings for a Peace Corps assignment. And were you comfortable? Do you feel like, given that training and your native intelligence, that it was something that was going to be manageable for you?
Well, you know, I went in with really kind of high expectations, you know, and this is very, I guess, egocentric in a sense, American egocentric, and I thought that, you know, I really thought I could show them something.
I can handle it.
I really thought I could improve things. I really thought I could turn these problems around. Of course, where I went, they had all kinds of issues with deforestation, problems with watershed management. They had sedimentation of the reefs, and they had an ownership, landless population of people. They had an area that was struck by typhoons regularly, which was causing serious problems for ag. They had infrastructural problems. They had the roads were all dirt roads, so they couldn't, even if they had ag product, they couldn't get it out, and so the area was severely depressed, and economically, yeah.
Okay.
And extreme poverty in this section of the Philippines. And so, you know, I went in thinking, you know, maybe I can do something. And I think at the end of the day, I did help with some things, but I certainly learned a hell of a lot more about them than they learned about me. It was a real eye opener for me. So from that sense, it was interesting.
In a bit of our conversation earlier, you were telling me about the presence of the rebel army there, which I believe known as the New People's Army, as an offshoot or a reincarnation of the Philippine Communist Party that I guess from my history got a foothold in after World War II. and evolved into the New People's Army, which some of our audience may have heard of. I believe they're the people that group that kidnapped some tourists from Malaysia and brought them back to the Philippines. Is that the same group?
There was kidnappings. I'm not aware of that specific incident. Yeah.
You know, in America, we're taught really to think, well, communists, they're bad, they're evil, it's you know, somebody we have to fight.
Right.
And so, as I understand, there was a faction or a presence of this rebel army in your area. Is that correct?
Right. I think they're, I don't know, they call themselves kind of Maoist. That's what I always thought. And I don't know if there's a distinction between Maoist and communist. There's probably some nuances, but yeah, there was the town I lived in, Mulanay, was a MPA stronghold, New People's Army. They've also been called Nice People Around, No Permanent Address, using the acronyms and a pun on the acronyms. But you know, you rarely saw them. They kind of worked in the night and behind the shadows, and they collected revolutionary tax from people in the town.
Tax.
That's how they sustained their insurgency. They were there because of the problems of land tenureship in that area. There was large haciendas owned by large landowners, and so most of the people there were landless. As you mentioned earlier, there was a labor movement and land reform to try to change these things. And basically, these rich landowners were alleged to have, you know, committed atrocities against these groups to try to stop it because they wanted to maintain their power and their hegemony. And so I think the insurgency is there because, you know, it's trying to play the Robin Hood role. You know, we're going to steal from the rich and give to the poor, and that was really their charm. And it was that there was a charm about them. I never really figured out if people really liked them or they feared them. It was a very interesting situation. There was a large presence of a Philippine army up and down the peninsula, so you had to go through checkpoints.
As well. So,
yeah.
So you have two opposing groups. You have
Right.
the Philippine Army, which represents the so-called official government, and the NPA faction that in fact controlled, or maybe controlled at night, and the government forces controlled during the day. But, so now here you are, a volunteer. What strikes me, and for our viewers' sake, you're thrown into this situation. It sounds to me like it's a great recipe for conflict. Were you exposed to it? First of all, were you prepared for that?
Oh no, I wasn't prepared for that.
So you're kind of thrown into the fire, and so what happened? You must have had some interesting experiences as a result.
Yeah. I learned how to. I learned how to survive. The skills I learned in that theater have helped me in my life. You know, deal with difficult situations. I can just relate one quick story. I was
Please.
working with the municipal tax assessor of Mulanay, and you know, we wanted to go to a fiesta in one of the outlying barangays, or barrios as they're known in the Philippines. And so it's about a 15-kilometer hike up through the mountains. And so we set off on our journey, and we were hiking and walking through the jungle, and a mist was coming down through the trees. And I saw some fellas walking towards us, and they were dressed in military fatigues and carrying Armalites, which are the kind of weapons that the MPA would carry. And the municipal tax assessor kind of tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "Those aren't Philippine Army guys." And I immediately realized that we had just run into New People Army troop. And so they stopped us, and they were kind of shocked and surprised to see me. And they basically said, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer, and I'm doing agriculture. I'm really here to help the village learn some agroforestry techniques to improve their lives, hopefully." And they kind of interrogated me a little bit, and I was a little bit scared because I really didn't know what to expect or what they might do. And so the guy said, "What do you think of our insurgency?" And I thought, what I say at this moment might determine what happens to me.
Yeah.
So I looked at the guy and I said, "I respect a guy who fights for what he believes in." And with that, they kind of smiled and said thank you, and we all went on our merry way.
A simple, honest answer that could be interpreted just the way you hoped it would be.
Well, saved my life, maybe. Not.
Oh, Probably did. And just out of curiosity, what was their focus on the municipal tax collector? Were they, was there animosity towards him, or did they understand who he was?
They understood. They all knew each other.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
It was the
It's a
MPA
small-
was very much ingrained into the community in Mullanai, and you know.
And why
even to
wasn't
this-
he fearing for his life?
Because they wouldn't just indiscriminately do anything to him, because I think they knew him. I think
I
he was
see.
kind of acting as if he's a neutral party. I think that's how they kind of survived as citizens. You know, we're very neutral regarding this conflict. You know, they wouldn't really take sides. You know, they would kind of play both sides of the
Yeah.
game.
Did the Peace Corps instruct you to be neutral, or did they prepare you that this area was ripe with this conflict and give you any guidance of how to act?
The only thing my my regional manager said to me when he sent me there was, you know, if you see guys in military clothing, they're probably not Philippine Army.
Well, this sounds like you would have good reason to feel let down by the Peace Corps. Tell me
You know,
your feelings about that, if you don't mind.
There's a saying in Peace Corps, Chip. Yeah, it's the hardest job or the toughest job you'll ever love. And I really kind of laughed at that initially, like, what the heck does that mean? And then, you know, after it was all said and done, I really understood what they meant by that.
Okay.
It was very tough dealing with all the problems in that area. It was a disadvantaged area. It was the middle of an insurgency. It had problems with getting its products to market. It was typhoon-ridden. And I stuck it out. I went through it. And you know, in hindsight, it's probably one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life.
Well, that's a great testimony to
So,
Peace Corps service, or perhaps any kind of service to humankind. But I'd like to explore just a
Sure.
little bit more this idea of you're here and put in by by the extremely bright, intelligent American government into basically what sounds like an untenable situation. Obviously, the local people there aren't so ignorant that they couldn't think, why is this guy here in the first place? Well, tell us how you viewed their reaction towards you.
You hit the nail on the head right there. That was a huge issue, and basically, they believed that I was working for the U.S. government as an agent. You know, they would call me CIA. Okay. And at first, I laughed at this, and I said, you know, no, I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. I'm here to do agriculture for you. And you know, it persisted through my whole service there. And at the end of the service, I realized that, you know what, they may have really believed that I was working for the CIA. And
never
so
did
I used
buy
to,
the truth from you.
And I joked with them one time, and they'd say, oh, Sam, CIA. And I'd say, yeah, I work for the CIA. That's the Coconut Investigation Authority. Let me see your nuts. And they would all crack up. You know, we tried to lighten the air, but you know, despite all that, they were the most hospitable, warm, loving people I had ever had a chance to be with in my entire life. They opened their doors for me in every way you can imagine. They took care of me. It was I can't even explain it. And that's part of the feeling of loss when I left, was that I realized that I was leaving a place where I would probably never experience that again. That type of interaction with people, the kind of love, the kind of openness, you know. So it's a double-edged sword, right? You have, you know, the poverty, the insurgency, the suspicions, but then you also have on the other side the beauty of the place, not only with the environment, but with the people.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful
The essential
experience
beauty
when
of
I
it
did.
is
Yeah.
from the people. So, I mean, so kind of following my theme of the original question, if suspect you are there and not really able to accomplish anything, did you find that they were helpful to you to try and enable you to accomplish things?
Yeah.
Or it was just, would they shrug their shoulders and say, well, you can't really do anything, Sam. It's nice to know you. Let's have fun.
No, that, you know, that's an important question that, you know, you have to talk about, because it is a job. You know, you're supposed to go and do something. And I was assigned to an agricultural high school called the Bondoc Peninsula Agricultural High School, and I had a manager there, a host country supervisor, and Mr. Ramirez, and he was really only interested in me getting him a car. And so when I told him I really wasn't interested in getting him a car, I kind of changed my focus from the school. Although I did stay with the school and help the school with their nursery, I changed my focus to the barangays and reaching out, you know, to some of those areas to see what ways I could help them. And, you know, I did some things. You know, I tried to start an artificial insemination program in the municipality. I tried to introduce apiculture. I brought some colonies down from UP Los Baños, and we planted a lot of trees. We brought a lot of seeds in. Because of the monoculture, which is copra, coconut,
Okay.
you know, they had a problem. They needed to diversify. So that was one of the things that I was trying to help them with. And I brought in this species of acerola. It's a Barbados cherry, very high in vitamin C, and like 10 times more vitamin C than an orange. And we planted those and tried to establish that, and I suggested that they use it like to make candy or something. So we did home gardening, taught them composting. But you know, there was always that issue of, you know, I think there was an impact, but I think in other locations you could have a bigger impact if there was more of a program for you to key into.
Okay. You're able to have that impact if the situation provides the fertilizer for it,
Yeah.
if you will. And here, what I'm hearing is that the odds were stacked against you in essence. And do you have any resentment towards Peace Corps or towards the management of that area by Peace Corps or by the government? Which you certainly rightly could.
I don't have any resentment against Peace Corps. Peace Corps treated me fairly well, given the situation.
And I guess I should couch that in that I make that statement in that I would imagine you have an expectation that you're going to be set up to do something worthwhile. I mean, that's the general outline of Peace Corps mission. And but by the same token, you find that you're put into this bizarre situation, which is very interesting to me and hopefully to our viewers, because it's different than many Peace Corps experiences that we've discussed in the past.
Right.
And it helps us to understand that the world is a unique place, and that you landed, it sounds to me like you landed on 2 feet and were able to really make the best of it, given everything that was stacked against you. In the 3 minutes or so that we have left, I'd like to find out, well, what you talk about your love for the people and the love that you felt, the warmth, I guess I could say the humanity that you experienced there. In your work now, or since your return to the United States, how have you brought that home? Do you think? Is there something you can share with us?
Well, I've been in public service all my life, and you know, Peace Corps was a big part of that. And then when I came back from the Philippines, I wanted to continue in public service, and so I went to graduate school and got a degree in planning, and then I entered the state government.
In planning?
In planning, and then I entered state government, and I'm working for the Department of Land and Natural Resources right now.
Oh, wonderful. And
basically just trying to help us solve some of our environmental problems, and helping protect and conserve our environment for the benefit of ourselves and for the future generations. Kind of like trying to be a little bit of a watchdog over things, because we need people we need people around that that care about the future, that care about the resources and the environment, and we need people to protect it. You know, we need caretakers. We need stewards. And I'm not saying that I'm a steward, but I'm trying to be, and it's something that I love, and it's something that I think I derive from my experiences in life, and including my Peace Corps experience.
Well, I would say that given the sometimes contentious view of land issues here in Hawaii, and I certainly believe that our environment is very precious and should be well managed and well looked after and protected. But it's not necessarily a universal feeling here. And I would say that in your time, your experiences certainly must have provided you with the ability to see how people can be passionate from both sides of the story. Sam, I really appreciate your sharing a very personal experience with us, it seems to me, with our audience here in Hawaii through this program, Bring the World Home. I think you have brought some of the insight into what the rest of the world was like, especially your background in the Philippines, Quezon Province and Bondoc Peninsula. We appreciate your ability to share with us the fact that conflict is not necessarily going to take away from the idea of people serving people. You try to do something, you try to accomplish something, and you want to have a good outcome, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. Thank you again, Sam.
Thank you.
I hope
It's a
you
pleasure.
can come and see us another time.
I'd like that.